I have shared a bunch of my Harry Potter hot takes with you here on this channel, like the fact that I think Remus Lupin is a bad guy, and that Xenophilius Lovegood raising his daughter with all this misinformation, having a deadly explosive erumpment horn in her house that she thinks is just an ornament, is borderline abusive parenting. Some of my hot takes have been pretty unpopular with you guys, so I thought today I would give you the floor. I asked you on Instagram, go and follow me if you're not already, and here on YouTube, subscribe if you're not already, to share with me your Harry Potter hot takes, and in this video I'm going to respond to them, rate them, and open them up for discussion. Caleb Bowman says that Harry Potter is the most underrated character in the series. Now, I recently made a video where I ranked all of the Harry Potter characters, and I put Harry himself lower than apparently most people think is fair. A big chunk of people in the comments of that video called me out for it, but my thinking is just that I think Harry is quite one-dimensional as a protagonist. That's not to say he doesn't have flaws, like sometimes he gets angry, but I think reading protagonists from other stories really puts a limelight on the fact that Harry just always does the right thing. It's never more obvious than in the second task of the Triwizard Tournament. This guy has been ridiculed by his entire school. There are Potter Stinks badges on pretty much everyone he passes in the corridors. And he gets to the kidnapped people in the lake before anybody else, and then he has to try and save everyone. And in the Battle of the Seven Potters, he refuses to do anything other than disarm someone like Stan Shumpike, which I understand is doing the right thing, and that's who Harry is, but that's what I mean by being kind of one-dimensional. Like some of the instances in the series where Harry feels guilt are like when he sees Arthur being attacked from the point of view of Nagini, and he's like, oh, am I Voldemort? Did I do that? Is this my fault? Which obviously it wasn't. I would like for there to be some instances where some things were Harry's fault, and some of the guilt he felt was justified, and injuring Stan Shumpike when fighting for his life and to protect his friends in the Battle of the Seven Potters feels like a great example of where something like that could have happened. He feels guilt again for like springing the trap in the Ministry at the end of Order of the Phoenix. Again, it's based out of him doing what he thinks is the right thing. There is like not an inkling of moral ambiguity to his character, and so that's why I just think he's a little bit one-dimensional as a protagonist. By comparison, the moral ambiguity of the protagonists in The Hunger Games, or in Divergent, or in The Northern Lights, or in Brandon Sanderson's Reckoners series, or in Scythe. There are plenty more, these are just a few that I grabbed off my shelf. These feel like more complex, multifaceted protagonists. Now, very few people say that Harry Potter is their favourite Harry Potter character, and so Caleb might be right that he is underrated because of that. But me, personally, I think he is appropriately rated. Okay, the Speed Attack says that Kreachers Tale is a top 10 chapter in the books. Kreachers Tale is a phenomenal chapter, and I'm so annoyed they didn't put it in the films. Chapters like this are about the only thing that keeps me excited for the TV series that I don't think they should be making. But the fact that we'll get to see this and some of Voldemort's backstory with Harry's private lessons with Dumbledore, they make me think maybe the TV series isn't all bad, because I'll get to see those scenes come to life on the screen. Kreachers Tale, definitely one of those scenes I want to see, because I loved it in the books. Is it a top 10? Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of what my top 10 chapters would be. Like, I think there are a few chapters for the battle in the Ministry. Flesh, Blood, and Bone is a huge one. Lots and lots of chapters in the Deathly Hallows. A bunch of the Half-Blood Prince 2 with Voldemort's backstory and the battle at the end. But I do think Kreachers Tale is up there. I think it probably just creeps into my top 10. Maybe I should make a video of my top 10 chapters from the books. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. Okay, John Jankowski says, I don't hate the idea of Delphini. Is Delphini Voldemort's child from The Cursed Child? I haven't seen The Cursed Child or read it. I don't know very much about it. John says, I don't hate the idea of Delphini. I feel there could have been more interesting storylines that could have been made other than making her a one-dimensional villain. So it's hard for me to speak on whether she's one-dimensional because I know nothing about her. I think the idea of Delphini, of Voldemort having a child with Bellatrix, I'm pretty sure, makes me a little uncomfortable. First of all, Bellatrix is married. And secondly, Voldemort doesn't love. He doesn't have friends. So why is he gonna procreate with Bellatrix? The obvious answer is he wants an heir, right? But I'm just weighing up whether he's Slytherin's heir and he's proud of that, like that heritage and everything that comes with it, versus how much he hated his muggle father and his weak mother, and that he hated that he was a half-blood, even beyond just not wanting to think about him and Bellatrix doing what needs to be done to have a child. I can't see him making the decision that that's an appropriate thing to do, or that that is a helpful means to an end. Maybe if he won the Battle of Hogwarts and he had conquered and was ruling, but like, why would you even want an heir when you think you're gonna live forever? I don't like the idea of Delphini. I can't comment on whether she's a one-dimensional villain. the idea of her doesn't sit right with me. Doesn't feel consistent with Voldemort as a character. Rob Suze says, Harry becoming an Auror is strange when the last sentence of the book is, I've had enough trouble for a lifetime. Also, it brings his family into danger and the allegiance of the Elder Wand into danger. That's such a good point, actually. I never thought about the Elder Wand side of things. Especially because in the books, he doesn't destroy it. He just buries it back with Dumbledore. So yeah, the first part, I've had enough trouble for a lifetime. Why would you then go and fight crime? Like, I'm pretty sure the extended universe canon says that Hermione becomes minister. So like maybe it's part of her campaign to get elected. She's like, if I get elected, Harry Potter's gonna come back as an Auror. Wouldn't that be great for everyone? I have no idea if that's how it happened. Just one of the only reasons I can think maybe he would come out of retirement. But yeah, frankly, he's rich enough, he's gone through enough trauma. Just stay at home with Ginny, play Quidditch. Don't even play pro, just play for fun. Putting his family in danger, so true. It's not like he's not recognizable, and they won't know who the boy who lived who took down Voldemort is if they see him hunting them as dark wizards. And then since his wife is a famous professional Quidditch player, it's not like they're a couple away from the limelight. So yeah, it puts them all in danger. And then Harry wanting to fulfill Dumbledore's plan of retiring the Elder Wand by being its true master, and having had all the witnesses to that final battle with Voldemort, which makes it clear that he is the true master, people would come after him just for the Elder Wand. And look, you might say they won't be able to find it in Dumbledore's tomb, but Voldemort found it there. It's not like Dumbledore was advertising that he was taking it with him to his tomb. So yeah, I think him being an Auror is stupid, especially when you compound it with the whole Elder Wand thing. Soft Squishy Sugar says, Order of the Phoenix is one of the best and underrated Harry Potter movies. For a second, I thought you were going to say books, and I would have disagreed. I do think it's a good book. When it's at its best, it's fantastic, but there's so much bloat to the book. So much stuff that is drawn out that doesn't need to be. I agree with this. I don't actually think it's that hot of a take, honestly. I think The Order of the Phoenix is a pretty popular film. The bloat I mentioned from the book, I think they do a fantastic job of cutting that down, only including the essential stuff for the movie. So yeah, Soft Squishy Sugar, I'm with you on that. Okay, XS8038 says, I'm not sure how hot this take is, but even though Victor Krum isn't a dark wizard, it is really weird that he fancied Hermione and Ginny when he was 18. I feel like people gloss over that a bit too easily. This is so true, and there's so many different angles to why this is messed up. First of all, the age, Victor Krum, 18 years old. Hermione, I think 14, Ginny even younger. Secondly, the power dynamic of the fact that he is a very successful and famous celebrity. When people are literally fawning after him in the corridors, and when people like Hermione and Ginny have been in the audience watching him play in the World Cup final, I'm just not sure on the power imbalance when he expresses romantic interest in them, even regardless of the very, very gross age difference. How would that impact Harry? Because he's obviously very famous and successful and well known. Never really thought about that, especially since he ends up with Ginny, who literally was infatuated with him since she was 10 years old. There were points where she was so starstruck and obsessed with him that she wouldn't even speak, she'd just hide. It does feel like a power imbalance. Okay, Nicola Pendragon says, the choice to have Harry destroy the Elder Wand in the films is a smarter choice than the one in the books. Now, we've sort of touched on the Elder Wand already in this video, but yeah, you're so right. Not destroying the wand is absurd. Now, one thing I will say is that I feel like destroying the Elder Wand is probably not possible. Like, this wand has been around for hundreds of years. You have to win it from somebody by basically killing them, or at least that's what everybody thinks through history. So all the battles and duels it's been through, if it could be broken, I would have expected it to have been broken already. So my thinking is it can't be destroyed. Like, this is the most powerful wand in the world. You think you can just snap it like a twig? That said, putting it back in the tomb with Dumbledore, from which it had just been stolen, literally like 24 hours earlier, doesn't feel like the smartest place to hide it. Like, you literally have the Room of Requirements in which Voldemort hid his Horcrux for decades. Feels like a more obvious place to hide it, if you ask me. Carlos Delgado says that Ron kind of sucks as a friend. He's not a nice person, and a relationship between him and Hermione would never work. Okay, 2 main points to Carlos's hot take. One of them I agree with, and the other one I disagree with. So Ron and Hermione's relationship, I think, works as a high school relationship, but the idea of them being married for 20 years and having kids and still being happy, not for me. Doesn't work for me. Firstly, from everything we know from the books, and granted Ron is a teenager and he probably will grow up and mature, but from everything we know about him, Hermione is almost certainly going to have to mother him as well as be his lover. Why did I use the word lover? Partner, girlfriend, wife, whatever. But Hermione is a brilliant, badass, ambitious witch, and the idea that someone will need mothering from her, and she's supposed to see them as a partner and an equal, I just don't see it working long term. But I disagree that Ron is a terrible friend. Movie Ron, I can see your point, but book Ron? The 11-year-old who offers his food to the stranger on the Hogwarts Express he's just met? Who sacrifices himself in a chess match? Who, alongside Harry, goes into the Chamber of Secrets to save his sister? Who stands up on his broken leg, to face off against Sirius Black, telling him, if you want Harry, you're gonna have to go through us. Twice, by the way. He does that twice. Who, in the books, before Hermione, tells Harry, we are with you on this Horcrux hunt. No matter what it involves, we're there. Just these big moments show he is an incredible friend. And sure, he has moments of jealousy, like in the Goblet of Fire, and he's really impacted by the Locket Horcrux, and he says and does some very immature things, don't get me wrong, but I think at his core, he is an incredible friend. And actually, I think he's the most believable teenager out of pretty much all of the characters. For being grumpy and getting jealous, for being hormonal and blowing things out of proportion, I think he's a believable teenager, but a fantastic friend. Okay, a smallish slice of cake says that Fenrir Greyback is the most evil character in the series, more than Umbridge and Voldemort. He said to Dumbledore that he wanted to come to Hogwarts because of the delicious children. Voldemort being a mass-murdering psychopath, Umbridge torturing children, and Greyback being a predator, not in a werewolf way, they are all disgusting people. And whilst I don't feel comfortable objectively saying this kind of evil is worse than this kind of evil, what I will say is that Umbridge and Voldemort are often called the most evil characters. And so I think how evil Fenrir is often overlooked. Like, he should definitely be in that conversation. I would say Gilderoy Lockhart is in that conversation more often than Fenrir Greyback, and I don't know if that's appropriate. Okay, Wolkey324 says there is no reason for Krum to have caught the Snitch in the World Cup final. It's the last game, there is no point differential to worry about. Once they were down by 160, he should have just focused on stopping the Irish Seeker from catching the Snitch. And if the game went on for days, then good, maybe the Irish chasers would get tired and Bulgaria could have gotten with 150. I kind of agree, and there was a lot of discourse below this comment on YouTube. People obviously saying what the Weasley said, that he wanted to end things on his terms, that the Irish chasers were just too good and they were just going to get further and further ahead. If Krum makes it his life's mission to just stop the Irish Seeker from catching the Snitch, then who cares if they go 200 points down, 300 points down, 500 points down? They haven't lost if the game doesn't end. So Wolkey324, I'm kind of with you on this one. And I think in a team sport, it's kind of selfish for the narrative to be Krum wanted to end things on his terms. Like, the longest ever Quidditch match went on for 3 months, apparently. And you're telling me Krum couldn't even have waited another couple of hours, or a day or two, to just see how the scoreline is going. David Walton says, I really enjoy the Half-Blood Prince movie. I know a lot of people don't, but the whole teen romance, I just can't help but smile at. David, I am so with you on this. The Half-Blood Prince is not my favourite film, but it's definitely up there in the conversation. Now, I do understand people's gripes with what they left out, particularly Voldemort's backstory, but what I love about this is that the stakes rise and rise and rise and rise through Harry Potter as we get towards the end of it, right? From the end of the Goblet of Fire, when Voldemort comes back, the big battle in Sirius dying at the end of the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore dying at the end of the Half-Blood Prince, through to the eventual battle and the war. What I love that the Half-Blood Prince film does is, while all those stakes are rising, it reminds us that our main characters are still just teenagers. They still get jealous and have crushes on each other. They get caught up in popularity and being good in school. There's things like trying to get a date to the slug club and getting your heart broken, or fancying someone and they don't fancy you back. And I think reminding us that the world is resting on the shoulders of literal children who are concerned with these seemingly mundane things like popularity and teen romance, as well as saving the bloody world. I think it's a really important thing to remind the viewers. This is not some 35-year-old superhero trying to save the world. It is a teenager. And I really like the way that grounds us. Beardo Books says the Goblet of Fire film is actually good. Everyone disses on this movie because it misses out things like Ludo Bagman, Winky and Sirius in his dog form. However, you have to appreciate that the producers of the film couldn't afford to fit in every little detail. I kind of agree and kind of disagree. I think if you have never read the books, The Goblet of Fire, on its own, standing by itself, is a decent film. No, decent does it a disservice. It's a good film. The tasks in the trial are epic, and the big moments like Voldemort coming back, that duel in the graveyard, fighting the Horntail, they're all done very, very well. But I think The Goblet of Fire falls down not just because of what it misses out in Ludo Bagman and Winky, but in what it loses from the story. Because The Goblet of Fire is fundamentally a mystery novel. Who put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire, and why? And to a lesser extent, how? The entire year, the Triwizard Tournament, all of the new characters that we meet fall into this mystery. Karkaroff and Snape become red herrings. Could they have done it? Why would they have done it? Why do they want harm to come to Harry? And so I think people aren't just upset that fan favourites like Ludo Bagman and Winky weren't in it because they wanted to see them, but I think it's because they were integral to the mystery, to the fundamental part of what this story is supposed to be. Ludo Bagman is another red herring. Winky is essential to the Crouch storyline, and Crouch is central to the big reveal around the mystery. So I don't think it's about book puritans just wanting these details because they want to see them on screen. I think what makes The Goblet of Fire such an incredibly compelling story is that it's a mystery. It's a whodunit. It's comparable to Agatha Christie, right? To something like Knives Out. And the film just loses all of that. XS8038 says everything Barty Crouch Jr. did was for Voldemort because all he ever wanted was to be loved as a father's son. And if Dumbledore or anyone else had helped him earlier at all, Barty would have become one of the greatest Aurors or Order members in history. Going into the Ministry with 12 OWLs, being supported by love and appreciation, rather than being resentful, unhinged, and diabolical because of his father's absent and controlling nature. Did Barty Crouch Jr. get 12 OWLs? How many did Hermione get? Only 10. Damn, this guy was a clever guy. I would love to agree with this, because I do think the nature versus nurture, the importance of love, the narrative around people like Dumbledore's decision-making when it comes to the people in their care, I think this would be a great extra strand to that bow, another thread to the narrative. But I just feel like we don't get enough of Barty Crouch Jr. to fundamentally say that the reason he ends up being evil and unhinged is because of his father. Like, his father definitely has a lot of flaws. I'm not saying that doesn't play into why Barty Crouch becomes the way that he does, but can we say that's definitely the main reason, the main driving force? I'm not entirely sure. One thing I am sure about is that Barty Crouch Jr. should have been in the entire back end of the series. Having the Dementors give him the kiss at the end of the Goblet of Fire, stopping him from ever coming back, huge mistake. I did make a whole video about it, which you can click on this card up here. Okay, Theo says that Hagrid was more of a parental figure than Sirius was. Maybe. Hagrid is definitely there more, but I think that's partly because he's not in Azkaban most of the time anyway, and because he lives on Hogwarts grounds, right, where Harry spends most of his time. Sirius doesn't have that luxury. But is Hagrid more of a parental figure? He definitely looks after Harry, he definitely loves him, don't get me wrong, but when Harry, Ron, and Hermione drop care of magical creatures, Hagrid sulks and refuses to talk to them. Hagrid puts Harry and Hermione in danger by asking them to look after Grawp when he has to go away, when there must be somebody he can trust more who isn't a child, like Professor McGonagall or Flitwick or somebody like that. So maybe he's a parental figure and just a little irresponsible, but I feel like that's the only real thing you can criticize Sirius for as well. Like, he loves and cares for Harry at every possible opportunity. When Harry's in the Triwizard Tournament, Sirius lives in a cave, feeding off scraps just to be close to Harry to try and help him. Certainly more than Remus Lupin did. Just saying. Sirius obviously treats Harry a bit like James, like he wants to have fun, and when Harry won't come and see him in the Order of the Phoenix, he's like, well, James would have liked the thrill of potentially getting caught. So there's the irresponsible side of things there as well. So I don't know that Hagrid is more of a parental figure than Sirius. Maybe on an even keel. I think Arthur is top, right? Arthur is the main parental figure that Harry witnesses. It's not a crime. Being close to Harry Potter is not a crime. Except when he's undesirable, number one. Arthur, I think, is the main father figure that Harry has in his life. Okay, XS8038 says Dumbledore didn't have any good reason to not tell Harry about the prophecy in Order of the Phoenix, because Voldemort couldn't have done anything about it, and Dumbledore literally abused Harry by ignoring him and invalidating him the whole year. Okay, let me process this for a second, because I think a lot of Dumbledore's decision-making is bad. Now, you're definitely right to say that even if Voldemort finds out about the prophecy, he can't just go and retrieve it himself, and so Dumbledore could have told Harry based on that. But if Dumbledore tells Harry that there is a prophecy about him and Voldemort, Harry is going to want to know what that prophecy says. And so then Dumbledore has two choices. He tells Harry what the prophecy says, knowing that he, Dumbledore, is pretty much the only person who's ever heard it in its entirety. But because of the mind connection between Harry and Voldemort, if Harry knows, Voldemort could find out. Or he tells Harry, hey, there's a prophecy, but I can't tell you what it's about because there's a mind connection between you and Voldemort. But at that point, he's not sure Voldemort knows about their mind connection. So is it worth the risk of telling Harry and making it easier for Voldemort to find out? Does that then potentially open the door for Voldemort to try and possess him? Or to set many other traps for him? Maybe. I don't think it's clear-cut enough to say he should have told him about the prophecy. There are too many other variables that could play out. And I certainly think when it comes to the return of the most evil wizard ever to face the Earth, erring on the side of caution, probably for the best. People in the comments are going to start calling me a Dumbledore sympathizer. Okay, Jeff973 says, Uncle Vernon was kinda hot. Hot-headed, am I right? Hey, look, I'm not going to shame anybody for what they find attractive. If disgusting, abusive man is your kind of thing, you know, more power to you. At least you know what you like. Personally, Uncle Vernon, not really my type. Theo1951 says, Fred's death was a good writing decision. I agree with an asterisk. Just by sheer numbers and probability, a Weasley had to die. And I suppose making that a character who is jokey and lighthearted, and then the severity of them being cut short mid-laugh, I would have agreed that it was a good writing decision if we got more scenes after the end of the Battle of Hogwarts, where we actually saw how that death impacted other characters. How George reacted, how Molly and Arthur reacted, hell, how Percy, who hasn't had a relationship with him for 3 years and finally came back to fight alongside him, then saw him die immediately, how he'd react. But we sort of didn't get any of those reactions. And so if his death isn't a catalyst for other people's stories or their development, then you have to look at it exclusively as his death being part of his arc. And for Fred, I'm not entirely sure that he needed a death to complete his journey. Now, in the wider world, what it represents, like I say, losing somebody seemingly innocent, somebody who didn't deserve to die, somebody young with their whole life in front of them. Yeah, I can see that being a necessary thing to include in a war part of a book. So I don't have strong feelings necessarily about whether it was a good or a bad writing decision, but I don't think it was like, it had to be Fred. Tom Pernil says Voldemort should have killed Lucius after his errors and mishaps. It would have been more in character for him to just get rid of him, rather than keep giving him chances to redeem himself, and would have sped up Draco's redemption arc. It definitely would have been more in character. Sparing Lucius after all those mishaps and all those mistakes definitely doesn't feel very Voldemort-y. That said, he does talk in the Battle of Hogwarts about how every drop of magical blood that is spilled feels like a waste. And so killing Lucius, who is such an embodiment of pure blood and the kind of things that Voldemort values, maybe actually avoiding killing Lucius is in character for Voldemort. That said, I do like what it would have done to Draco's redemption arc. I've always really liked the idea of Draco when he's about to kill Dumbledore, and Dumbledore says to him, "We can help you, we can protect you and your family." Draco accepting and going into hiding, and eventually helping the trio on their Horcrux hunt. And I also really like what that would do to then Ron falling out with Harry and Hermione. Maybe a few times they side with Draco and his plans over Ron and his ideas for hunting Horcruxes. There are a lot of things that wouldn't work there, like they won't even tell Lupin about hunting Horcruxes, so why would they tell Draco? As an alternative route for Draco's character, I really like it. And so maybe having had Lucius killed by Voldemort would take Draco from just being fearful of Voldemort to hating and resenting him, kind of wanting revenge, and therefore more likely to say to Dumbledore, yeah, okay, I accept, I will take your protection. So yeah, I like this idea. I can see Lucius having been killed. Okay, Philip Alexander Moen says, the hottest take of all, the 19 years later sequence is not that bad. Nope, no. There are a number of things I don't love about the Harry Potter stories. I think Fawkes coming down to the Chamber of Secrets when Harry is seemingly in a position he can't get out of, facing a snake he can't even look at, with no wand and no magical powers, and suddenly Fawkes flies in with the Sword of Gryffindor and he blinds the basilisk, and the Sword of Gryffindor just happens to be the one thing that can kill a basilisk. One of my least favourite parts of the Harry Potter series. But worse than that, worse than how much I dislike how that sequence plays out, is the 19 years later epilogue. I hate it, okay? I really, really hate it. I think it focuses on Harry and Ginny's children when we know nothing about them. It almost feels like, you know what a backdoor pilot is in TV? When you're watching something like The Office and then suddenly there's an episode about Shroot Farm where all of Dwight's family come in and it's actually a backdoor pilot. It's like trying to gauge audience interest of, what if we made a show about this? They do the same in Suits. They have a Jessica Pearson episode in Chicago to see whether there's audience interest in having a series about Jessica Pearson in Chicago. 19 years later just feels like a backdoor pilot for The Cursed Child. Let's introduce these kids, these characters that we know nothing about, and see if people care enough for us to develop a stage show about them. The idea that these high school sweethearts are still married with kids 20 years later, everyone's happy, their stories are tied up in a little bow. If Harry has named his children after all of these other characters, including Snape. It's just not for me. If you want to know what I would like from the end of the Deathly Hallows book, how I would have changed the epilogue to be way more fulfilling, well, I made a video breaking down exactly what I wanted from the end of that book. Exactly the kind of scenes we should have got to get closure, to wrap up the world we'd fallen in love with. It's all detailed in this video, which you might want to watch next.